This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron. Aaron, how we doing?
Doing pretty good, man. I missed you. We had the bye week, and that was really good for me to sort of decompress, but I missed you on Sunday. I know you still went live with our boy Anthony, but it was a hiccup in my routine, man.
Yeah, it was weird. I talked about, sitting there actually watching Red Zone. Like I talked about this on a show I got invited to earlier this week that, on Sundays, the Bills monopolize a ton of my time. Like, I don't flip to other games ever. I don't even, I'm using the timeouts to build my structure for the show. I'm jotting down notes. As soon as the game ends, I'm running upstairs to start doing the show. Then we do the show for an hour. Then I do post-show production stuff. And then usually I'm coming down fourth quarter of the 4 o'clock games. And I've then watched no other football the entire day. So it was cool to sit there and I had the 4 box going and I was watching 4 games at once and had another one on my laptop. And it was kind of fun to watch a whole bunch of football.
Yeah, I didn't watch any on Sunday. I really didn't. I took a day. I had on in the background. I was doing a bunch of projects and stuff. So I had it on the background. I did watch. I really focused on the Miami game at the end. So I caught the second half of that game and tried to pay attention to that. But I didn't even watch Sunday night. Barely did the 4 o'clocks. Just kind of decompressed away from football. But the red zone's great, man. Because we've had the Bills this year, because we had the flexed games from COVID. That Sunday, I got to watch red zone all day. When we have the 4 o'clock game, I love watching. I hate anything that isn't a Bills 1 o'clock game, but if the consolation is I get to watch a ton of football, all compacted into the red zone, man.
Speaking of that, for Bills fans who are like Aaron and I and praise the elite 1 p.m. Sunday football, cherish this game on Sunday because it's the last one for a while.
This month's going to be terrible.
We're gonna then go 4 straight with Monday night, Sunday night, Saturday afternoon, Monday night, all back to back to back. It's our last 1 p.m. game until the last game of the year. And if the Dolphins go on a run, there's a chance they could flex that game because Week 17 gets pushed all the time where they don't want anybody to know their fate before, and they put all the games in the 4 o'clock window. So there's a chance this is our last 1 p.m. game of the season going into it. So cherish that 1 p.m. window for everybody who's with Aaron and I.
Son of a bitch. And the Bills are they undefeated in the 1 o'clock window?
1 o'clock, 1 p.m. Eastern, undefeated.
I'm starting a conspiracy theory. This is going to turn into a conspiracy show. The NFL's out to get us by flexing schedules and stuff.
So, before we dive in, tonight's show presented by our friends over at Uncle Jumbo's. Make sure you're checking them out at UncleJumbosDistillery.com. All kinds of good stuff. Just broke out some new orange cream soda, and they got some root beer float coming as well. So, sound like some good things to do over the holidays here. Make sure you're enjoying yourself responsibly. And we'll get into our friends over at West Her later on in the show. But tonight we're here to talk about the Chargers, and it's interesting. We're going to get into some of the specifics, but they had the offseason that I wanted. I did a ton of work on why I wanted Brian Balaga and Linval Joseph and Chris Harris and a whole bunch of names of players. So as I'm going through, I'm like, oh yeah, they did get all those guys that I wanted. It's a fun roster. I think you and I were talking pre-show. Not that I wish this, with playing a better team, but I think if they had a fully healthy squad, you're talking about absolutely one of those next tier AFC teams, right there with the Bills, right there with the Ravens, the Titans. They've been robbed of quite a bit from a roster standpoint, from a health standpoint. It's tough to be able to make up for those gaps, but there's still some talent here.
Yeah, dude, I feel super bad for Chargers fans because this has really been going back 3-4 years, this
maybe
roster.
5.
Yeah, it feels like it's been forever that they always have these just huge rash of injuries early in the season too, in preseason.
Heck, Derwin James has he played a game in the last 2 years?
No, and they had a number of key players go down here, and their rosters are really for the last 4 or 5 years have been, if healthy, a team that can compete at any level. And the Chiefs, I think, are lucky to have to, that they've gone through this type of battle with injuries throughout the few years, because even with the injuries that they've had and the down luck, this is one of the best 3-win bad record teams that I've watched and looked at. Like, this team still does strike real fear in me, and that's weird to say about a team that has 3 wins. And in my opinion, maybe their second best player was out for the year and never even played. So to be able to overcome all that, I think Anthony Lynn's done a good job over there of keeping that ship kind of going and still playing competitive football as a 3-win team. But if they can get healthy, man, this is going to be one of those teams that next year is probably going to be looked at as one of the big bounce back teams if they can just get a healthy roster together.
Oh, I can already see myself talking myself into it with the talent that they have. So, let's dive right in, kind of start with this Chargers defense. I had made the comparison that there's some similarities to the Rams, where I think people see, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, and the same thing here. You have Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, and it drops off a lot. If they still had Chris Harris, if they still had Derwin James, I think that there's some talent that, Casey Hayward is playing well. Denzel Perriman's playing well. Linval Joseph is still a good nose tackle. He's still stout in his position. He's getting up there, but he's playing well in the reps he's getting. Michael Davis is a corner that probably made Desmond King more expendable than we realized, for them to get a pick there with him heading out into free agency. So, there's still some talent. I was kind of curious about the progression of guys that I liked. I like Jerry Tillery coming out in the draft. He's really struggled. Kenneth Murray was someone that I thought was a really good fit with the talent that they had here. I was kind of checking, what kind of curve is he coming on here? And, it doesn't seem like he's having a huge bounce back or improvement in the second half of the season yet, but a really fast, talented guy. So I think that having a stout protection plan with Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram coming off the edges is critical, because those are guys who can ruin games and just wreck a game plan. If they have a decent protection plan ready to be able to keep them from, not that you're going to limit it to 0, you're never going to stop guys like that from having any impact, but if they have a game plan to somewhat neutralize those two, I think they can put up a lot of points on this secondary.
I do think they could put up a lot of points on this secondary. I mean, it's crazy because we just talked about, you remove Derwin James from this defense and it goes from, in my opinion, a potential top 10 defense when you have that type of player at the second level to a bottom tier defense, playing similar so far. We just talked about it off air here, similar to how the Bills defense is in every DVOA category. So just to run that down, pass defense, overall defense, they're 20th DVOA, pass defense, they're 16th, rush defense, they're 27th. Those numbers are eerily similar to the Bills so far this year. Bills are 17th overall, pass defense is 14th overall, and rush defense is 26th. So when we watch the Bills every Sunday and those frustrations we have with just teams beating us on the ground and getting big plays and things like that, Chargers fans are having that same frustration. And I look at this Bills offense going up against a team playing like this Bills defense is playing, and I just see points all over the place, especially with the resurgence of this Bills offense over the last 3 games. I think they're averaging 32 points a game since that 4-game slump they had through October. So they seem to have gotten to a resurgence, and people will say, well, yeah, they haven't played any good defenses. Well, I'll tell you, they're not going up against an elite one here this week. So I think they can continue that resurgence here again this weekend.
Yeah, it's something where I think you need to be conscious of it. They have some playmakers. I mentioned Denzel Perriman. He's a good linebacker. I think he's made some solid plays. You need to be aware of where their guys are, and Josh has to know where Bosa and Ingram are in every single play. And if you're able to do that, man, I don't see a single corner here that can cover one of the guys we have, because Casey Hayward's nice in the slot, but nobody can really cover Cole Beasley. So, he can probably stop Beasley from having the 10-catch, 110-yard game he had last week, but, he's still going to get open on a 3rd and 4. And they don't have anyone who can match up with Stephon Diggs. And I actually think the size for Michael Davis is helpful against other big receivers. The size isn't going to help him against John Brown or Stephon Diggs because you need footwork and quickness to keep up with them. So I think that's going to be the biggest advantage I would go after, is really trying to be able to, it's going to be a ton of passing again. I don't really want to go at this defensive line. I don't want to go at Linval Joseph. I don't want to make Denzel Perriman the focus here. I'm fine with a really pass-heavy approach. PJ asking about Chris Harris Jr. No, Chris Harris is not. I don't believe that he's coming back. He was not coming back here. We'll get to it on the offensive side for the Chargers. They do have a couple guys coming back that direction. But I want to go at this secondary every single snap I can.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be tough because internally the Bills are going to try to get the run game going. It's been the talk of the town all week. It's been something that they've stressed over the bye. And when you do look at the film and you see other teams' ability to break off some big runs, you've seen teams get back into games or take leads on them. And with the way this offense is playing for the Chargers, I think there is a little bit of time of possession you want to get in there. You want to have a passing game and get up a big lead. But I could see a scenario where the Bills do get up a big lead and they are still primarily passing, like we talked about the 60-40, but I think they will try to establish some of the run game just to keep that offense on the field and keep the ball out of Herbert's hands a little bit here. And I think they want to show that they've gotten this run game going. So I do expect them to lean into it a little bit. Another thing that's going to impact that is John Brown's health. We saw him again not practice today. I think that's huge. I agree with you that nobody can guard Stephon Diggs one-on-one, but if John Brown's not there, you can afford to double team Stephon Diggs. And
if you can bracket him, that impacts anybody.
Yeah, and it won't stop him, but if you can contain him and then, take your chances with Cole Beasley. I like Gabe Davis, but he hasn't. If I'm a defensive coordinator, he's not a guy that I'm worried it's going to be the big Gabe Davis game, where I'm more worried about a guy like John Brown. Tight end position really hasn't had a big game. You guard those guys, but those guys aren't going to tear you up. So I think whether or not John Brown plays, to me, I think dictates how aggressive of a passing game they go. Because I agree with you. If we have our full stable of wide receivers, I'm all for spreading it out and force that defensive backs to stop you. But otherwise, I think you have to have a little bit more balance. And I think the Bills want that this week.
Yeah, and I think tomorrow's a key day, being able to find out. I don't know exactly how they're handling it, if tomorrow's a regular practice day. I know they practice on Tuesday, so my guess was that it was planning to give Thursday as the day off to be able to do Thanksgiving stuff. So Friday then would be the key day to be able to see, can you get that practice day in for John Brown. I don't need a full practice, but I need at least limited participation on Friday to know, can he be an option to be able to go out there. So we'll see where that goes and how they're able to put it together. I think you're spot on. I don't need it to be all the way to the Seahawks game where it's 28 passes to 2 runs.
Right.
But I want to see really pass heavy to open it. I want to see getting scores up early. And then I'd love to see, Eric's done fantastic breakdowns. You and I have talked about it, that there's a huge correlation between these third quarter problems everybody keeps talking about and the inability to run the ball effectively when we have a lead. I'd love to see that be where we get it fixed and get it going back. That, I wouldn't mind a 50-50 second half, and that you get the 70-30, 80-20 first half and then a 50-50 second half, and it nets out to 60-40, 65-35, and that we're able to milk it away, because I think that's when you can take advantage of it, get those defensive linemen tired early with a ton of reps, and then don't let them, control the game late because you're running at them. And that's always the best way to neutralize a high-end pass rusher, is to run right at them.
Absolutely. And a thing that scares me about this Chargers team, and we'll talk about the offense a little bit more here in a little bit, but there's opportunities for teams to really get up on them early, and we've seen it, and we've seen that offense get stale and the defense not play great out of the gate, and then the defense gets better as the game goes on and the offense gets going too, and that doesn't line up with this narrative that we've seen of the third quarter stuff. Now, I took the bye week to look into the Bills' third quarter stuff, and I got 0 answers. There's no one answer of what's going on. I don't know that it can be fixed. It might just be a thing. I'm not sure. But this is not a team that you want to have third quarter woes against, because you could be up 10 points, 3 scores against a team like this, and they can score so quick and get a streak of defensive stops against you in a really quick hurry. And they do that primarily. They have good second halves. They start out well in the second half. So the Bills really need to, I agree with you, get up early, but then really show that whatever they saw about the third quarter stuff, really addressed it here and fixed it. They've done that. They've done a good job of addressing things as they go and teaching the things that they need to. That's something I really need to see here going forward. And I agree with that. I think it starts with the run game and establishing that and trying to kind of control the game from that aspect.
So as we flip over here, I want to take a quick moment. For everybody that's been chiming in, giving us ratings and reviews, we really appreciate it. We're going to do another giveaway to our friends over at T-Shirt University. For anybody who does a rating, wherever you're listening on Google Play, iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you're checking this out, YouTube, give us a rating or review. We're going to pull a winner out of there and give away a T-Shirt University gift card here after the game. As we flip over to the other side of the ball, now we're going to talk about a team that's totally different because they have a young, athletic, big arm quarterback with a really, awesome route running wide receiver with other good receiving options. And oh yeah, it's exactly the same. It's interesting. I don't know exactly what I expected from Justin Herbert, but it wasn't this. I didn't see this in 10 games of him coming right out here. I was very skeptical on him coming out, and I think there's some garbage stats in there inflating some of the things here, and I've tempered the same way that I've talked about other quarterbacks. I think fantasy football has kind of merged into people's minds of how good players are when they put up big stats and wide open offenses with a bad defense. So first on the dial it back side of it, there's a reason that Justin Herbert is 2-7 as a starter and his only 2 wins are the Jets and the Jags. There's a reason for that. Separate from that, the kid has put up some ridiculous numbers, and they're not all garbage time. They're not all just hollow stats. He's put up some really impressive throws. So there's some similarities to Josh Allen in he makes 5 or 6 really frustrating boneheaded throws each game. They're not all getting intercepted, but some bad misses, some really rough reads in critical third downs and drive killing decisions. But he makes a couple throws that are just breathtaking, really similar to Josh Allen, where just there's not that many humans on earth that can make that throw. So I think fans are in for a fun show here this weekend between Allen and Herbert, and it's for any Bills fans who haven't had a chance to watch much of them because they haven't had a ton of primetime games. Maybe you've seen some of the tail end of things as they're flipping over for coverage because they're always in some weird dramatic ending. It's going to be fun to watch a big athletic, big arm quarterback on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in there. So for me, I had really no expectations of Herbert because I have taken a few years off of even looking at draft quarterbacks because it was so exhausting in 2018 how much time we spent on quarterbacks. So I didn't care. I didn't look. But I did probably buy into a little bit of the draft Twitter knocking him in the love fest for Burrow, rightfully so. And then he just kind of got swept under the rug. And obviously had the love fest for Tua. And this guy has played fantastic, I think. I think some of the win-loss record, obviously our friend Bruce, wins are not a QB stat, I'd like to remind everyone. And that's true. This team, the Chargers, have found some really unique ways to lose football games throughout the year. Their record could be in the hunt for a playoff very easily. 5-6 plays in their season could be changing the outcome for them in a substantial way. So that's not all on him. But I'll tell you right now, man, if Josh Allen had this type of rookie season with the way he's playing, not just the numbers, but the throws that this kid's making, we'd be more insufferable than you've ever seen on Twitter. It's just that Chargers don't really have that many fans. So we don't.
all of them are insufferable, and it's like 6 people.
Yeah, all 30 of them are insufferable. So he's not getting necessarily the burn that we saw what happened with Tua, right? Tua came in and didn't even play well for a few games, and people were starting to crown him because of the win-loss record of the Dolphins at the time. But I'm way more excited here to see him play against this defense because I think there's going to be some opportunities for some big plays. I was actually shocked when I look at the explosive plays because when I watch film, it seems like they're making explosive plays all the time and at a great clip. they're actually behind the Bills by a substantial amount. The Bills are first in the league in explosive pass plays at 40. LA's 12th with 34. So it's not a huge difference, but they're middle of the road in the NFL, and I thought it'd be much higher because they seem to connect on these all the time. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think they take more shots. So I think the Bills have maybe been a little bit more efficient with it because it seems like Herbert's throwing it deep all the time. So
the Bills have had a bunch of extreme plays as of late that turn into explosive plays, so that helps.
Yeah, it's really interesting where the way that Herbert's putting this together. I know both of us are big fans of Warren Sharp. Warren Sharp hates Anthony Lynn with a burning passion. He thinks he's the worst coach in the NFL. He thinks he's worse than Adam Gase, in that he thinks he's the reason that they're losing those games, not Herbert, in that he just makes incredibly, really poorly informed decisions, and that he's the least analytical coach in the NFL. Like when he goes
he's
for
from that Rex tree, so
for tons of first down runs, tons of second and long runs when he passes on first downs, really bad decision making on when to go for it, when to punt, really poor time management. So he rakes him over the coals constantly in the reason that they're 3-7. So if he can get out of the way, maybe Herbert could get a couple more of the wins there.
Yeah, but a big part of Herbert's success, and Eric highlighted it here this week, is Keenan Allen. And this is a guy that I've had a super crush on for years. I don't know why. Greg, tell me why. Maybe it's just playing with the Chargers and they don't have fans, so they don't have anyone on Twitter to hype him up. But this guy doesn't get the love even close to what he deserves. The love he needs to be up in those conversations of Stephon Diggs's of the world and the Julio Jones, like that.
DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams. He should be talked about.
He's in this top tier wide receivers, and it's going to be a huge problem the way they use him in the slot. I've supported Terry Johnson as an okay player in this league. I don't feel comfortable about Taron Johnson, Sarah Neal, AJ Klein, any of the following options with him in the slot. And I don't think they're going to move Trey into the slot to go one-on-one with him in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that they trail a little bit and do it, but like you said, they move Keenan Allen in there for a reason, to be able to get him away from top cornerback coverage. And, last week was extreme. Obviously, it's not going to be like that all the time, but for anybody who didn't watch the game last week, Keenan Allen had an NFL high 16 catches, and I think it was 16 catches on 18 targets. It was unbelievable how much Herbert goes to him. So, we've had games like that in the past. We have the games. Jamison Crowder had that 14 catch game. We've had a lot of games where, giving up a lot of 6 and 7 yard catches isn't the end of the world. Keenan Allen is a phenomenal guy in creating separation, getting open, contested catches. He's not necessarily an elite athlete who's going to have huge yak after the play or burning guys or breaking tackles for things, but if you let him lead a drive, converting on first downs and get down in the red zone, he can get open and create separation on anybody. So I mean, it's a really dangerous balance of, do you let him kind of get his while you're controlling everybody else and not letting everybody over the top, but is he letting him convert first downs? It's going to be tough to be able to see how they balance it, because you're not going to stop Keenan Allen. So I'd love if they put him on the outside and we got to use Trey, but I'm assuming that we're going to see a fair amount of, sadly, probably some Taron Johnson abuse coming here Sunday.
Taron, it's going to be linebackers. I won't call it the big dime, but there's going to probably they'll run some dime, I think, out there.
Sure.
They'll
Getting Dean Marlowe back is a positive.
Dean Marlowe coming back is going to be good. A big thing is, I agree with you that he's not like a particularly yards after catch guy, but where he's annoys me on film and things that concern me is they do get in a lot of third down situations. It'll be like a 3rd and 8. And he'll get at the 5, and he makes just enough of a move to get that first down. So tackling is going to be massive in this game. Like you said, I don't mind giving up receptions to him. But when you give up the receptions, tackle him. Don't let him get that extra 3-4 yards and convert first downs, because this offense, again, they you think they make a lot of big plays, but they will dink and dunk quite a bit, and then they'll throw some play action bomb to Mike Williams out of nowhere because you're sitting and squatting on Keenan Allen. So you really got to focus. You got to tackle well, because they can dink and dunk and lull you to sleep, and before you know it, they can throw a bomb on you. But tackling is going to be a big one with Keenan Allen in that middle, and that's going to fall a lot on the linebackers and whoever they're running out there, whether it's Marlowe, Neal, and Taron Johnson.
Yeah, and it's gonna be interesting. Like you said, I don't know how they balance it from a strategy standpoint, and where they've had some good results sending more pressure. But when you send more pressure, you give up the risk of going deep. And we haven't talked about Mike Williams, but he's a huge weapon and is now getting into that territory of kind of those Miami games where Preston Wilson isn't some all-pro, but he's the exact kind of guy that's hard for our other cornerbacks to cover. Mike Williams is bigger, taller, faster, and better than Preston Williams. I mean, he is the antithesis of what you want Levi Wallace or Josh Norman out there covering, because he can go up over top of anybody to get the ball. And I'm a little bit nervous about that. I always trust Micah Hyde to make a play and guys to be able to do that, but I am nervous about that when you have Keenan Allen moving the chains, and then Hunter Henry, another guy who can move the chains and convert third downs, and then you have an option like Mike Williams to go over the top. It really does open up some potential threats. Tyron Johnson's a guy that isn't a household name, but has caught some, I think he's got like 3 50-yard touchdowns in the past 4 games. He's connecting with Herbert on some of these deep shots, taking the top off the defense. So it's going to be interesting. Right now, their running game doesn't have a whole lot out there. They've been, Kalen Ballage is rekindling his career. They've had Josh Kelly. They've had Troymaine Pope. All of those guys are there because they've had Austin Eckler out since week 4. For anybody who isn't aware, Austin Eckler was started his practice timeline coming back from IR, similar to how the Bills have done with other players. So he practiced for the first time today. He is eligible to be activated for this weekend. There's a lot of speculation about whether he will be activated now or whether it'll be a warm-up week and activated next week. But he practiced and apparently looked pretty good, and there is strong consideration to him playing this week, and he is a significant weapon if they can get him back.
Yeah, that isn't the news that I wanted this week here, because you look at the stats, and that's kind of part of what your evaluation on a team is, right? That's where I started anyways. I start with, where does this team line up, DVOA, and then I get into the film. And the thing that I liked is, all right, they have these passing weapons, but if we can sell out to stop the pass game and say, okay, let this team beat us with a run, because I don't think that they're going to significantly beat you with a run, great. Then you add in Eckler, and even if he's on like a limited count, he's a threat both in the run game and in the pass game, so he adds that dual threat ability. And even on a count, he's just not a guy that I want to now have to account for additionally to all those other weapons that you just mentioned. I do think you brought up a good point, that I'm not really sure how to defend this team, because the Bills have seemed to have found a niche in the blitz game and dialing up pressures and things like that. But then you see the statistics of Herbert performing best right now in the NFL against in pressure. And obviously Russell Wilson was performing really well against pressure, and the Bills were still able to bring some and get some in on him. So I think I know where your head's at on this. From doing shows, he was kind of take the gamble. Right, like take the gamble, and if they beat you a few times, just think that your offense is going to be able to match those points, and that you'll make enough plays to offset it throughout the game. Yeah,
I think fans need to prepare themselves that Mike Williams is going to get us once. He's probably going to. That Guyton or Tyron Johnson might connect on one. They might get one of those.
Bust a big run at some point.
Yeah, they're going to. I think they're going to roll the dice. I think that Frazier has found a combination that's working by being aggressive. like we talked about in the Bills offense against the Chargers defense, the Bills are going to score points here. Like, there's no question about that. They're going to put up some points. If you can steal a possession or two with those blitzes getting home, whether that's an ugly 3-and-out or ideally a strip sack, a bad pass into an interception, and you create quick points off of that, and then all of a sudden they can't catch up because you have a 2-score lead and you're just staying in front of them, like the Seahawks. The Seahawks kept scoring, the Bills just kept staying up by more than a touchdown, and they could never catch up. I don't think this is far off of that. I don't know that the Bills put up 44. That's obviously an exception, but that kind of game where they get up early, and then sure, we see a lot of things from Herbert, but we make them make enough mistakes that them putting up 24 or 27 isn't enough for it to matter. That kind of thing is what I hope to see, and I don't think that staying back and trying to keep everybody in front of you, especially if they get Eckler back, and you're talking about Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry and Austin Eckler coming out of the backfield, trying to plan as though you're going to shut that down, it's just unrealistic. Yeah, and there's a comment here, cover 0, send everything, get sure, maybe once in a while, but that's not going to be. Yeah. This isn't going to be the Leslie Frazier defense. They're still going to run quarters coverage. They're still going to run some different types of coverage. They're still going to bring some pressures that look like it's about to be a blitz, and then they're still sending 4. You just don't know which 4. Yeah, right. And then people, I think, often mistake that as a blitz play, but it really isn't. They're bringing one of those guys back. So I do think Sean McDermott said that Herbert hasn't seen ghosts much this year, and he hasn't. But I don't know. You talk a lot about good scheming defenses, and I think a lot of the league, Eric kind of brought this up earlier in the year, a lot of the league has been kind of on to the Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier defense. But with this team and a young quarterback, I do think that Sean McDermott's going to be able to scheme up a few looks in this game that will confuse him, will give him some hesitancy in what he's seeing, and be able to dial up some mistake plays that way too, where you're not necessarily, you bring pressure a few plays in a row and then you dial up some exotic look that like you're bringing it again, and then everybody drops into a coverage that he's not expecting. And I think that's a lot of where the big plays this weekend are going to come, is get him in the pressure, make him feel like he's got it, you figured out, and then you do something else, and just all you need is that 1 second hesitance, anything like that, to make a play on the ball. And I think that's where the Bills need to strike opportunities and jumping on some of these routes and things like that to make a big play happen. Well, and the Chargers' schedule has also been interesting, that there are no games, the most aggressive teams you're talking about, the Steelers, the Colts, the Ravens, the Bears, the Rams, they haven't played any of those teams. Right. So it's going to be interesting to see what are they going to be able to dial up here. And pressure and aggression can also mean disguised coverages and confusing a rookie. And this is the first rookie quarterback that the Bills have faced this year. I think that McDermott and Frazier are excited about that opportunity to be able to play a rookie quarterback and to be able to see, can they, throw a little something at him that he's not used to seeing, and being able to get him off his base there. So let's kind of pivot over and talk a little bit about our friend here that we've been talking about. Justin Herbert is, I think there's a reason that, Chargers fans are probably feeling a lot like Bills fans were, and that I think there's some reason for it there. He's been, the kind of player that gives hope to those. We joke about how few Chargers fans there are. If they have a chance of getting a foothold in the city of LA, it's with a guy like this. It's with a guy who's going to take deep shots, is a big, fun, athletic guy, probably a shoo-in now for Rookie of the Year, with, Tua getting benched and very sadly Joe Burrow getting hurt in a really, rough-looking injury. Yeah. I hope that they give it a shot. This is as good a shot as they're going to get. When you get a rookie quarterback with this kind of exciting setup, it's something that they need to be able to cash in here. So talking about Uncle Jumbo's our player spotlight for this week, I think Justin Herbert is a really interesting, situation of, can they get better blocking? That, I talked about how I wanted Brian Bulaga. everybody not named Brian Balaga is really struggling on that line, and that, he is having to run around a lot. You talk about how good he looks. The numbers are out of pressure. I think it's because he's under pressure so much. Mm-hmm. He's getting used to it. And you saw, and again, I'm not, nobody wants this. I'm not wishing injury on there. You saw how that affected Joe Burrow, and that eventually you can't let a guy get hit 60, 70 times and assume that there's just no downside. I hope to see them get that fixed, because the NFL is more fun when there's more young, athletic, fun quarterbacks. And, I'm just like you were. I wasn't doing a deep dive there, but I didn't think well of Justin Herbert, and I'm glad to be wrong, because I think it's more fun to have guys like him in the league.
I think it's more fun to have guys like him in the league, and I think it's fun to have guys that break people's molds of what they think a quarterback should be. So we saw the Tyler Dunn article here about Josh Allen and the Mahomes and all that process, and loved the article. My biggest beef has been with how Kurt Warner talks about quarterbacks, and he's very stubborn in what he believes a quarterback should look like. And Herbert's just another example of a guy, and I don't think this is going away in the league. I think you're looking for big, strong, big-armed, athletic quarterbacks that can do more, extend plays and get out of the pocket and freestyle a little bit and still be able to make some big time plays. I think the NFL's trending in that direction. I don't know if it's going to be ever fully there. I think there's always going to be a place for the pocket guys, but I think the big coaches are looking for a point guard of the offense, and trying to, maybe won't recapture what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do, but to get some of that kind of magic. A creator, exactly, and that's what he is, and it's more fun. It's a more fun style. When Josh Allen was a rookie, I didn't think he was ready to start. In a perfect scenario, he doesn't start. But with the way this team was, I wrote an article for Cover One making the case that if you want to win, you start a guy like this because of that potential ability to make big plays. Like, yeah, you can live with the crap throws every once in a while and 50% completion percentage, but you know what? That person gives you way more opportunities to stress a defense and make big plays and cause a defensive coordinator headaches than anyone else on your team right now. So if you have that guy, play him. And who cares? Let the chips fall where they may. And Herbert's definitely, his floor is way higher than the things I heard about him coming out were going to be. So I'm super happy for him. It sort of flies in the face of all what we hear about the draft process and how, like, every year they say, well, the 2018 class was the best class of all time, and no, you better get a quarterback there because you're not going to find one. There's always a guy, and it's finding that guy and getting him in the right system. So it's just another example of, there's always guys there. You just got to find them, and you got to have faith in these people.
Well, and people all the time, I think I certainly copped doing it in that 2018 class. People always talk about, I know that drafting quarterbacks is normally a 50-50 proposition, but this class, I think everybody might be good. And there's always a Trubisky, and there's always a Josh Rosen, and there's always another guy that, like, I don't
Sam
know.
Darnold,
yeah, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, like guys that are sprinkled in amongst these other really good, really talented quarterbacks, and that, some of these guys might be struggling here. I'm not really sure. So I'm excited that this year it looks like, obviously Joe Burrow looks like the real deal. I pray that they get him some protection there because, besides the obvious of what we just saw, that's not sustainable to make him run for his life, even if he's not getting hurt. I think Tua is better than what we saw him getting benched last week, even though I enjoyed that thoroughly. Watching him get benched, I think he's better than that. And good.
Deshaun Watson, I'm sick of seeing Deshaun Watson run for his life every play and try to make plays on his own. Like, I don't want to see him succeed more than the Bills, but I want these young quarterbacks. Yeah. Eric and I talked about this offline. Josh Allen's big play running numbers have gone down a little bit this year, but that's because he's finally doing what he's good at, which is using that athleticism to extend passing plays, not to run for his life,
his eyes downfield,
and be the entire offense. That's not what these athletic quarterbacks are for. Yeah, it's keeping your eyes downfield. It's doing the Aaron Rodgers, the Russell Wilson of just getting enough and being too elusive to sack and tackle, where if a team bring pressure, you can still get out and find a guy open, because it's hard to cover in this league for more than 3 seconds, man. We see it all the time. Like, the rules are slanted against defensive backs. These wide receivers are too talented. You give stuff on Diggs 3 seconds to get open, taking it every time.
No way. So switching over, our friends over at West Her, the biggest dealership in New York, 23 dealerships all throughout Western New York. If you're looking for a vehicle, make sure you're checking them out. We've talked about a couple different areas of numbers here. You brought up some interesting things from DVOA. You brought up some things on the big plays. What else do you have for the people here?
Yeah, so this one, we were kind of talking about what are we going to talk about for numbers tonight, and something that I wanted to take a look at was all the talk last year of the Bills' inability to score points, right? Like they were 23rd in the league at 19.6 points a game. They had a good defense that obviously gave them enough opportunities to win with those kind of numbers. But all last year, I remember arguing with people and saying, like, look, they're not far off from being the next level, right? Like in the NFL, doesn't take much. The needle doesn't have to move a ton to get you into that next level. And all it took this year, I think if you talked about this offense, everybody's super excited. They're 11th in the league, which is great. I love going into the top, towards the top 10 here. And I think they're trending in that way after a 4-game slump there, because now they're averaging 32 point something points a game over 3 games. But for the year, they're at 27.2 points a game. That's a 7.6 points per game difference. That's one
more
score.
touchdown.
One more touchdown. That's all you needed. And people mocked and ridiculed Sean McDermott for talking about just getting to 21 points, right? And I don't think he meant all we have to do is always score 21 points.
He didn't mean he only wants 21 points.
Yeah.
He meant at least 21.
And I think what he was saying is get that many scores, get up around those many scores and you'll be middle of the league and you can win a lot of games that way. And I think we're seeing it. So I think when you talk about changes and how a team needs to perform from year to year, and, we even look at the Bills, explosive run plays aren't much different than they were a year ago. Obviously it's the other run plays that we need from Devin Singletary to get those yards per carry up, but the explosive plays are still there. So you look at it year to year, and it's usually not as big of a difference as you think. It's just that the league, there's so much parity in the league, and things are so close that if you're down a player 2 in explosive plays, you go from being 11th to 23rd real quick. Like, it's not a huge difference. So those leaps that teams need to make really aren't that massive, and they can be done. So I try to keep that in my mind when I say, hey, the defense is really struggling, but where we saw them ranked at the beginning of the season towards the bottom of the league here, they've been slowly moving up with it. And now in DVOA, they're overall 17th. I think, over the next few weeks, you get this to a top 15, top 10 defense over a few weeks going into the playoffs, man. I don't know. You give me a top 10 offense, top 10 defense, I think you could beat anybody. So the push to get to the next level is never as big as you think it is.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the right way to talk about it. That kind of progression, that kind of movement, and being able to get those things going the right direction, which weren't an accident. Obviously, it took a material step forward from Josh Allen. It took adding new weapons. The exciting part for Bills fans is that there's still the potential for a little bit more here. I think that we haven't seen a complete dominant game yet. No. We are now seeing potentially the first time we're going to see fully healthy units here, maybe the offense fully healthy this week, and then the defense if Milano's ready to come back next week, or maybe one more week for both if John Brown and Matt Milano are both waiting until San Francisco to be back. It's exciting to know that there might be more potential on top of there to be able to figure out what those next steps are and what are the things that they really need to be ready to be able to look at. So
there's a ton of meat on the bone, and we've talked about it all week with the third quarters. So you look at all those third quarters, there's a drive or two in every one of those third quarters. They're leaving meat on the bone. So there's definitely there's room to grow if they can clean a few things up. And it's not a big thing either. It's a thing or two here and there.
So now getting down to it, we had a week off to decompress. We had, thankfully, a week off to get that play out of our lives. And I love the way that...
What are you talking about?
Exactly. I actually love the way that Sean McDermott approached it today, saying that one pass is not going to define our season. It's just that they've moved on. They're ready to do that. Now looking at this game, you're talking about a home game. The Bills are 5.5 point favorites. I've seen it anywhere from 4.5 to 6, depending on where the book is, which I think is right. I think they should be a healthy favorite at home here over a team that, you're talking a 7-3 team versus a 3-7 team. That stuff matters. It's the highest over under of the week. Some books have it mixed with the Vegas and Falcons game, but 54.5, 55, depending on where you're seeing it. What do you have in your mind for this week's Buffalo Bills game, Week 12, Bills against the Chargers? What's your prediction?
I have this as 34-28 game. I think the Chargers are going to make enough big plays to get back into it. I think they struggled to get going. I think the Bills are going to come out hot offensively and do enough defensively. Maybe they give up a field goal here, a touchdown there, but keep it pretty much at an arm's length, almost similar to what we saw in that Seahawks game. I think we'll see something very similar where, the Bills get off hot. Maybe the Chargers come back just enough for the Bills to just keep the foot down a little bit more. But I do think the Bills should be able to handle this team just enough. And my only fear is that they leave it close enough where the Chargers finally get one of these close games to break their way, because you can't have as much bad luck as this team has had this year. It's just, I don't think the law of averages is in the favor of that. So you want to be ahead into the fourth quarter with really no real question, up 2 possessions or more, and maybe they score again at the end of the game in garbage time, because the Bills love giving up garbage yards and touchdowns for some reason. But that's where I've got it.
No, I like it. I'm very, very close. I think it's super similar. I've been using that Seattle game, for a reason. I think the Bills jump out early. I think that they stay in control the majority of the time. I'd love to see them top that score from Seattle. I think that maybe they see 38-28 and might even be there where they could get another score, but kneel it out because they don't need to, being able to milk the clock away with finally getting some 4-minute offense when they need it. I think they can get some second half running game going. I want to see them pass to get the lead. I want to see them establish that, jump up early, control it, and put it away, because you're able to get a little bit more established running game going. And that leads right into PJ here has a good question. What is your prediction of the 5 offensive linemen we see here this Sunday?
Well, I get accused a lot of the time of being a homer and taking whatever this organization gives me. I've been silent on speculating on this Mitch Moore stuff. I'm not sure. Something's off. Something's weird. I don't like it. My bullshit meter's going off every time Sean McDermott's talking about it, and I don't feel good about any of this. If he doesn't start, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to have some things to say in the post-game show. So what I want is what I've wanted all year is to see Mitch Morris with John Feliciano next to him and Deion Dawkins next to him. And I don't really care about the other guard spot. Botker's played fine in the run game, so sure. Bacher, I guess. Cody Ford, if he's healthy, sure. I don't have a huge difference there, but definitely I want Mitch Morse in this lineup. And if he's not, I've got a problem. And I'll never be the guy that says I demand answers from a coach. They don't owe me anything, but I want some freaking answers. If Mitch Morse isn't starting, I'm going to be pissed.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I'll take that a slight step further. I expect it to be the Buffalo Bills starting 5 for the first time this year. So Cody Ford was limited in practice today. We'll have to monitor that, but he was heading back the right direction. I expect this to be, for the first time all season, Deion Dawkins, Cody Ford, Mitch Morris, John Feliciano, Darrell Williams, and having the core 5 offensive linemen ready to go. And I think that's the biggest piece in getting this running game back to where it was, because although Cody Ford has plenty of work to do from a pass blocking standpoint, he is a road grading dominant run blocker. He can be a really, really high end run blocker, and getting the attitude from Feliciano, the movement from Mitch Morris, getting him back out in space and letting Cody Ford lean on those guys. That second half with the left side of Cody Ford and Deion Dawkins, that's a lot of power to be able to deal with. I'd love to see them lean on them like that in that second half, and that is what I expect to see.
Yeah, and I agree. And we've said it all along. If you have those other guys, the other guard position is the weak link, and you can hide weaknesses in the pass blocking game and stuff like that. So
A lot of the questions here all around, there's who plays cornerback who, does Dane Jackson on the practice squad, will Dane Jackson get a starting role? So we'll bundle those all together. My first thought is that he's not simply going to usurp the starting spot ahead of Levi Wallace and Josh Norman from what he's shown. I think he's had flashes. I think he's looked good. I think Bills fans have taken those flashes and assumed he's a hidden superstar in waiting. I think he's looked good. I think there's a better chance of him competing with him and Levi Wallace as well as a draft pick for the starting spot next year. This year, I think they go back to a rotation of Levi Wallace and Josh Norman. And if they falter, they know they have something in Dane Jackson as a backup plan. Don't minimize the communication and experience they have of knowing the calls and knowing where they're going to be between Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds, Taron Johnson, Trey, and Levi Wallace. Like, that matters. I think Levi's going to get that shot. I wouldn't mind Dane Jackson getting some rotation with Taron Johnson. I want Dane Jackson active on game day and available. I'm not calling for him to start over those guys. I think he was good. I'm excited to have him. I'm not ready to give him the job.
Yeah, no, I'm not there really yet at all. I want to see more. So I get fans that also want to see more. You just don't do that now. I think until Levi Wallace loses that spot, I think this team will allow him to go out there and lose it before they make any type of real switch. I do think Norman will probably get some rotation in there, but I think Levi's the starter, and I think he's done enough to be the starter. I think they do trust him. He had a hiccup this year for a game or two, and I think he responded well. I think he's a pretty good cornerback. He was an undrafted free agent. Like, he's way overperformed who he came into the league as. I think he's been a good number two. That position gets heavily picked on when you have Trey White playing the way that he's ramping up to play too here. I like Dane Jackson. I do agree with you. I want to see him compete for it next year. I haven't seen much of him in the slot, so I'm interested.
That was projection in the offseason. People assumed that he could.
I'd like to see it, especially if Taron struggles at any point in a game like this. I think you maybe give him a shot. He has all those types of aggressive play that you like from Taron, so that's a natural fit. But yeah, no, I think, and as one thing, I think fans are super down on Josh Norman, and I'm not high on Josh Norman, but we haven't seen this guy. He played 3 games and some limited snaps, and some of it was ugly and some of it was fine. Yeah. So this whole idea that he's all of a sudden trash, even though people were excited about him in the offseason, I don't know. I don't know if he's trash or not, but I think we're going to find out. I think he's going to get a number of rotation snaps here coming up to end this season.
So that's one I could see where them testing it out, in that I don't see Dane Jackson taking a starting spot, but maybe they test it out to see, should the rotation be Levi Wallace and Josh Norman, or should it be Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson? They don't have any obvious loyalty to Josh Norman. I think there is some,
there's some locker room.
I don't want to say some loyalty, but they've invested time and energy and love into Levi Wallace. They're not just taking his job away when he hasn't lost it, especially to another guy who's been good but not phenomenal. With Josh Norman, if he gets toasted a couple times, they'll keep him there and let him be a locker room guy, but they could easily give those snaps to Dane Jackson. So that one I could see needing to figure out by the playoffs, to figure out, hey, maybe that rotation should go the other way with Jackson and Wallace, but I don't expect Jackson to just take a starting spot.
No, and there's some time to figure that out, and I do think they'll allow both Norman and Levi Wallace to struggle a little bit. They've shown that they'll allow their players to struggle a little bit, and they're going to make them lose those jobs at this point in the season. And Dane would really have to just ball out to usurp them. And I can't see a scenario where he gets enough reps.
Yeah, I'll be surprised. So I will say the one thing I get that people like is I love the aggression. I love his physical approach. I love him making plays on the ball. That's the reason he gets these opportunities. That's not so much that he's taken the job. So Joseph here asking, do you think we can take advantage of their struggling special teams? So I'll ask Aaron,
can they take advantage of ours?
Is the key to this game. Can we be less bad? So Andre Roberts, this is a game where he could make a big time play. Their coverage units have not been good. Their blocking units have not been good. They've given up block punts. I'd love to see Andre Roberts break a big one here. I think that we will see a nice return. It's silly to predict a touchdown from a special team standpoint. I bet we see one of those 40-yarders from him where he, gets us a big chunk, flips a field on a punt, gets us a big head start on a kick return. I do predict that we see something nice from him. I think Tyler Bass has now shown we can fully trust him. The kid kicks 54, 55, 58. I am 100% on board with Tyler Bass. I hope that we don't punt once the entire game and all we see is Corey Bojorquez hold. And I don't think they have, Joe Reed is not someone I'm terrified of from a return standpoint. So I don't think they have anyone that scares me dramatically from a special team standpoint coming back the other direction. So I think this is a solid positive in our favor as long as we can keep Bojorquez away from punting the ball.
Yeah, I will say if Roberts returns a punt or a kick, I think the Bills score 40. I think it's a 40 burger on this team, and then the Bills just run away with this game. Because usually in the past, I always think, if they're going to beat a really good team, they need a special team score. But if you get it on a team that you should beat, man, it should be a blowout. If you get that extra free
snowball rolling.
Yeah.
So our final question is the most critical one. Walk us through what is on your Thanksgiving Day table tomorrow.
So we usually do a much bigger spread. It's just going to be the four of us here with COVID. So we're going a little later right now. My wife's been brining a turkey for a couple of days. So we start with the protein. Turkey's overrated. I got bad news for everybody. It's fine. It's okay. It's not up there.
It's tradition.
It's animal. It's it's better than spiral ham as far as like holiday.
How dare you?
Spiral ham.
We're gonna fight about that at some point.
It's gross. And so we're doing that. We're doing a spinach cheese casserole because green bean casserole is also disgusting. So we're not doing that. We're doing mashed potatoes, little candied yams, which I think other people call that a sweet potato casserole or something along those lines. She's got a couple other things, some roasted carrots planned and some mac and cheese for the kids because my kids only eat noodles. Yeah.
So we're very similar. It's just the four of us. We're making a ridiculous amount of food for just the four of us. Today I did some Redskin garlic mashed potatoes that turned out phenomenal. I've got those ready for tomorrow. I did the sweet potato casserole. So yeah, we do the same thing, sweet potatoes with brown sugar, cinnamon, all the goodness mixed in there. We do marshmallows on top for ours. Yeah. So I've got that ready. We're just doing a couple turkey tenderloins. So I'm not roasting a whole turkey, but I am just doing I got 4 big turkey tenderloins that I'm going to just do some olive oil, salt and pepper and seasoning. Going to roast that up. I've got a broccoli casserole because we don't do green bean casserole either. So I got a broccoli and cheese casserole type deal that we're doing. And then I do a really good cream cheese corn mix that is pretty good with some chopped up jalapenos and then stuffing. I love stuffing, so we make a copious amount of that, and then I'm just gonna eat Thanksgiving food by myself here in the house for like 4 straight days. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I'm more excited. I do love sides, even though our friend Bruce Nolan does not like Thanksgiving.
By far his worst take. Bruce is a really smart guy. He's one of my favorite guys in Bill's Mafia Twitter world. He's so wrong about Thanksgiving sides. It makes me furious.
But my favorite thing is throwing it all on a sandwich the next 4 days and just eating sandwiches with all kinds of stuff on them. And I agree with Matt here that you got to call it Washington football team garlic potatoes going forward here this year. No more Redskin potatoes for you, my friend.
That's really, really good comment, Matt. Yeah. That's stellar. That's really, really stellar. I'm excited. And for anybody who follows along, obviously I am going to be grilling a glorious ribeye on Saturday because Saturdays are for ribeyes, and that's why the Bills win. But this week, it's going to be accompanied with a bunch of Thanksgiving sides along with it, which is going to be great. It's going to be a huge ribeye with a bunch of Thanksgiving sides, which that might be the most elite meal possible. You're telling, because I did debate it if we were going to host, which, up until a couple weeks ago was still maybe on the table before, America took a turn for the worse. I was going to do a full prime rib, and I was going to roast a full prime rib, and that was going to be Thanksgiving dinner. So
I'm in favor of prime rib in lieu of turkey for Thanksgiving. I am in favor of prime rib in lieu of every holiday traditional meal. That's what we do for Christmas at my house. It's what I do for Easter. Like I said, ham sucks, so we don't do that stuff on Easter. We do prime rib.
All right, man. Thank you for everybody. The chat was awesome tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you to Uncle Jumbo's. Thank you for Aaron. Thank you for Greg. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.